Hit record. Welcome everyone. Liz, who's first on the list for sharing
Oh,
out
I can't
for
find that quickly.
Ariel, I think you might be first.
Okay, well, that is quite the start. Okay. Welcome everyone. Thank you very much for joining us for the Turing Way Book Dash Sharer. I thought somebody else was going to sign up before me, but my name is Ariel Bennett. I am one of the community contributors to the Turing Way. I am a white woman in my mid-30s. I'm currently wearing round glasses, a black top. I've got some jewelry on, and I am moving gently on my walking pad because I am a walking pad person now. And I'm on the Book Dash planning committee. So I spend most of my time when I'm at the Book Dash helping other people to contribute and to lead sessions and try and tackle some of the questions that people have. But one of the big things that I've been wanting to work on, and I'm just starting to share my screen now. Hopefully you can all see my screen. One of the big things that I've been working on this week is editing and adding to our chapter on models of culture change. So this is a issue that was opened back in June. We ran a discussion on alternative models of culture change in the last Book Dash, and we had an incredible discussion. We said, oh, we should definitely write that up for the Book Dash, and then we didn't quite get around to it. But now I have written up the discussion and also promoted cultural change from a sub-chapter to a full chapter. So you can now find a landing page with much of the same information as before. We've split out the culture change models and examples into its own sub-chapter. And then we also now have the discussion written up on alternative models of cultural change, which does have a disclaimer because it was a discussion. So it has a disclaimer at the top that says that it may be more opinionated than other guides in the other chapters in the guides. Although unfortunately, it looks like the image isn't loading properly. Oh no, there we go. So you can see this is the. For some reason, it's decided to load up the full image. No. Okay, just take my word for it that there is a chapter there with the discussion. It is almost ready to be merged. Esther has helpfully added a few more comments. But my big ask is if anybody else would like to review and have a look at the discussion and the pull request, you're very welcome to add your thoughts as well, particularly if you took part in the discussion that we had back in June and you realize I've forgotten something. That's the most critical ask. So with that, it's not quite, I was hoping to be able to do a live merge. It's not quite ready yet, but I will share the pull request in the notes pad and in here. And if anyone wants to give it another review, you're very welcome. But thank you to Esther for doing a review, and also to Jim and Richard who have helped with fixing some odd bugs that have come up as well. And thanks, Liz, for the kind words. So that's me. Liz, do you know who's signed up next?
I'm not sure if I'm in the right part of the document, so if somebody else has it.
It is quite long, Liz. I can
Yeah.
put it in the chat for you. So the next one is Sharon.
Okay.
All right. Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. So I've never done this before, and this is my first book dash. So I want to apologize if I kind of run out the other things I've been done, but I'll try as much as possible to do it as much as it flows within me. So during the book dash, okay, prior to the book dash, I had some conversations with Mavika. Oh, I think the introduction comes first. Okay, my name is Sheon Olufemi, and I'm a resident fellow at the OLS, and I'm also co-leading Bioinformatics Outreach in Nigeria. Majorly, what we do is try to build a community, a critical mass of bioinformaticians, which are going to be imbibing open science principles in their work. So as this whole body of work is, I'm currently also supporting the OLS 9 EDIA track with Mavika, and majorly what we do there is we are trying to teach open science via mentoring and training. And I'm so sure quite a number of people here are not new to that. So prior to the book dash, I've been having several conversations on how to improve reproducible research in African and low resource setting. Okay, so I'm trying to share my screen. Yeah, please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Yeah, so prior to that, we have been having these discussions in our one-to-one. Then I kind of figured that based on my personal experience in working around RI's research institutions in Nigeria, the largest in Africa by population, I figured out that it's quite essential that we have documentations that could help people improve on reproducible research as they move on, that will not be too technical, and it will be very, very easy for everyone to, imbibe to. So with that, I proposed that, and I got encouraged to apply for the book dash. We are going to, meet with like folks to do one or two things, to write one or two things, or to put my idea in setting. So during the book dash, I was able to put down some stuff, and special thanks to Mavika, Precious, and Christy. Yeah, Christy, for the discussions all through, which kind of help. So it's still very much underway. Currently, I'm kind of harvesting all the comments to have the final version. Which I believe that will be ready in no time soon. So this is the draft. So I'll put in the GitHub repo in the chat. So just in case that anybody wants to add his inputs before I try to merge your comments and do all together. So I hope that's how they're doing share out. And if there's something else, please do let me know. I'm not sure I've done this.
Great work, Sam. Amazing. One thing I forgot to do for mine was invite questions from the group, but I'd invite them for Seance now. So does anyone have any follow-up comments or questions? Got a lot of congratulations and great jobs in the chat as well.
And I think we've got Richard Acton next.
Yes, if there are no questions for Sam, but yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Richard Acton. I work for the Human Developmental Biology Initiative at the Babraham Institute in Cambridge in the United Kingdom. I am visually represented in this call by a South Park art style avatar of myself with a little audio visualization that moves around as my voice talks. And in the background, there are some artistic renders of various biological macromolecules, as I'm a little camera shy for video recordings. So that's what I appear to be in the call. So I've been working on a few different things this Book Dash. I'll start with something that I wrapped up from some work we did the previous Book Dash and some discussions that we had there about open source terminology and definitions of open source and adjacent terms. So I made some updates to the glossary in the Turing Way, adding some adjustments to the definition and including definitions of some related terms like free and Libre software and some movements like the ethical source movement and fair code, where there are some differences of opinion about the assertion of open source and free software, or being insistent on the freedom or to use that software for any purpose or not to discriminate against fields of endeavor. Some people would like to change some of those rules, but there is some different terminology to refer to those different schools of thought. So I think it's a useful thing to have included in the glossary. As Book Dash was, I'm writing an extension to the chapter on reproducible computational environments with some considerations for choosing different tools for managing your reproducible compute environments beyond just containers and things like Conda, in moving into the functional package managers like Nix and Geeks, and talking about the degree of completeness and the verifiability or transparency of other tools like VM images and so on for capturing compute environments if the image itself is not reproducible. So that's some ongoing work. And lastly, I've been working on adding a couple of diagrams that I developed recently for a workshop on Git that I taught actually in a journal club that I run. About sort of a high-level conceptual understanding of Git to provide some useful sort of mental models of how it works under the hood that I think is quite helpful for even for beginners to get to have a grasp on, so that they have a slightly clearer idea of what they are doing when they perform particular individual Git operations. And the sort of classic image to capture this from XKCD, the Git cartoon where now hopefully that's visible. Yeah. Shows that people tend to appreciate Git in theory, but then not necessarily have internalized how it works in practice. So they'll delete the local copy and start again if something goes disastrously wrong with their Git repo. So the aim here is to provide a little bit of insight into how Git works, so that people can know what questions to ask when they want to do more complicated Git operations. And yeah, I think that wraps it up. Any questions I'm happy to take.
A question that we asked at Share Out #1 was, is this going to be the resource that will help us to understand Git once and for all?
Well, so my ask is for some feedback on this PR, and there's a build preview of it. So if you're new to Git, especially, and I'd love to know if this is either clarifying or confusing, so I can try and adjust accordingly. So hopefully we'll get an answer to your question then in the feedback. Emma is raising a hand.
Thanks, Richard. So this is no shame on your artwork, because it is way better than I would be able to ever draw it. But I was just wondering, because we have the resource of Scriberia, I was wondering whether you were thinking about getting some time with them, maybe in the next Book Dash, and getting them to do some illustrations of your wonderful demonstration.
I had certainly considered asking them to do a more professional job.
I wasn't going to say that like that, because I think you've done a good job, but you know what I mean. Because then stylistically, it would kind of be
would be more
in our
consistent.
style. Yeah,
Indeed, yeah. I tried to use a similar color palette, but I'm not quite good enough to emulate their visual style, I'm afraid. So yes, I think that might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Okay, we have Anne, then Alejandro, then Kirsty.
I raised my hand on behalf of Brigitte, who's going to speak now.
Oh, yeah. Hi. So I wonder, it comes up each and every time when we are thinking about going into the weeds of teaching Git and an open source project. Is it better to reuse one of the existing ones? So have you looked into if none of those are reusable for Turingway? Is it worth maintaining yet another guide here? So what, or just highlight the difference, that how is it different than the gazillion other Git intros on the internet?
Yes, I think that's a very good question. I mean, it will be down to the opinion of the reviewers, I think, on this point, but I think that the approach that I take to explaining this is sort of different from most other Git tutorials, because the thing that I want to try and convey here in this section that kind of at the moment in its order, do this command to achieve this thing, is just a mental model of kind of what the tree that underlies Git looks like. Because I think it's extremely helpful to have that picture in your head whenever you start doing Git operations, especially anything that involves a more complicated change to the tree. But even just thinking about when you're committing, why it is that you're committing to the tree. So I'm sort of emphasizing in the opening to this that Git's not just, as it were, a tool for like auto saving, right? It's not just capturing the sort of random set of changes that you've made since the last time you started work on something, but rather is a tool for kind of curating a narrative history of your project and making sure that you include like granular changes. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to say, to have people critique it harshly and say, this is just rehashing something that's been told elsewhere. But hopefully I've got something that might be more useful to people than what's been said elsewhere.
You don't claim that there is like a really good thing out there that would work for everyone, but this is like the topic that I run into in all the open source projects I'm involved with. And at first we just go into like really the details, not just on a common level, but also like the cloud things that, okay, this is upstream and origin and yours, and then how the logic works. And over the years, basically most of those projects are removing those in-house built like overviews in favor of like the official Git.
Yeah.
So it's
this is a little more abstract than that, right? It's a little more basic than that. It's not just the sort of the granulars of origin and upstream and so on. It's more conceptual. It's just the sort of and it tended to be helpful for actually reasoning about when you do Git operations. So the main diagram that I have here is this one. It's a little bit complicated, but the sort of key things that I'm hoping to convey with this that I think are actually useful for when people use Git. So
I definitely meant like hold on like this, but and whenever I'm teaching Git, it's really useful to draw this on the whiteboard. I'm just having problems if you just leaving it on the page and letting people just read it, because so far with very similar stuff they still ended up in confusion. Anyway, it's great, and then I'm looking into it. I can't promise that I will find the time, but
thank you.
To take Kirsty really quickly. Yeah.
I can go really quickly. I'm slightly repeating something that I said in the morning's session. So Richard, you don't have to respond to this. This is actually building on Brigitta's point. So I think this point about kind of like the many philosophies of how to learn Git and the great sort of proliferation of blog posts that kind of you. I wanted to share that one of the origin stories for the Turing Way was I was writing contribution guidelines for a bunch of different projects that were essentially, so there was a moment where some contribution guidelines that I'd written appeared in sort of, some number of GitHub repositories, GitHub communities. And one of the origin stories of the Turing Way was like, it's good that we're copy pasting everything. It's good that we've got an open license and we're reusing everything. That's great. But as Rita was saying, like you then have to maintain it, right? Like then how do you proliferate an edit or an improvement across that whole network? And so an option is you put a chapter in a central, in a maintained community, and then those contributing guidelines or the other kind of onboarding documents point there. And the idea with the Turing Way was that the Turing Way could be a place that communities could point to, that they would feed their documentation in, and we would be able to kind of collectively keep the best practices, not just the best practices for actually doing the work, but the best practices for the way in which we train people and onboard people and support them to do the work. So what I wanted to flag is that actually, Brigitta, one of the most useful things that, obviously in your million list of contributions you could make is actually a chapter or a subchapter that talks about the many different ways of learning Git and the possible pros and cons of each of them. And I think, because I think probably what we're highlighting in this conversation is what's the best way to support people to move through a beginner to an intermediate to whatever calibration of advanced is important and necessary for your individual circumstances. So I'm very supportive of this. I do think that kind of overarching sort of explanation of how to navigate the content would be really, really helpful as like a long-term future plan.
Indeed.
Thank you. And Liz, we've got some comments in the chat around more ways equals more accessibility as well. Moving on, we've got Alejandro up next to show off. Alejandro.
Yeah, sorry that I have now very active now my daughter here. Yeah. Hi everyone. Just in this boot dash, I have, I guess I did some new spaces that never been, like the show and tell. That was my first one that I joined and was with Kirsty and like other people that I never met before, like Obi. And I guess it was great space to share some like side project that I'm working about a tour with the Pangeo community, and I heard also from Ariel and other people like have fun, especially with the Obi that she shared test animation generator. That was great. I guess I appreciate to share this kind of fun in the session as well with Jim with this kind of like automation with the light using the starting in GitHub was very fun. Yeah. What else I did? Like I contributed to the UNESCO session. Sorry, but I have like sorry, I need to share here something. Yeah, sorry, it was the delivery that was coming, so I was sharing the code. Yeah, to my panel. Yeah, and this session was very important because I contributed to the initial consultation, the UNESCO session. So I was very keen to contribute to this one that is about the monitoring, the principles, and I guess it was a great to go as a group again to these principles. And I found that the principles, there are some of them that are duplicated, and I guess they can potentially like consolidate then in larger principles. And I found that the definition of inclusion is not well. They can do more and better for defining the principle of inclusion. So I guess it's something that will be great to have there in the UNESCO. Unfortunately, I skipped the second half because of meetings. And I guess my main contribution in the session was like a conflict of interest in peer review section that I can share the screen now, but it's essentially my main motivation is like some experiences that I have like in scientific publication and as well in as well being a panel of grant funding and as well in open source software. So that was my main motivation to discuss this, and I found opportunity to expand that and share with the community. And I found this space in the peer review to draft this idea. And so far, I have some comments by Anne and Daniel. Thank you, Anne, for really providing this kind of initial feedback. And I hope to add more about that in coming collaboration conference. Let me just show how is the online so far of this. Oh. It's peer review. Sorry, communication. It's here, place it into the peer review guide, and it goes after explaining peer review and open reviews, how I propose the chapter to go. And essentially, I provide some context and I have some feedback that this context apparently is very complex. So I need to provide another example. But what I am describing here is like what we understand by conflict of interest. And there are different in the peer review, like conflict of interest, like they are well defined in like the publishers, or you find in another kind of settings. We have the financial and non-financial. And here in use cases, I just providing examples in the peer review. There is one initiative that the Committee on Publication Ethics, and they have a kind of different like use cases that they are anonymized, but they provide how they've been handling this conflict of interest in peer review for mostly for scientific publications. But what I found interesting is as well to provide examples in open peer review, and these are my experiences in the open source kind of peer review, checking live software in the Journal of Open Source Education and Environmental Data Science book. I just mentioned them as a way that people can learn. Yeah.
I'm just going to jump in and say you're sharing the shared notes document at the moment for your screen. So if you were hoping, yeah.
Okay. See. Oh my God, so embarrassed with everyone. Sorry.
That's okay.
Now? Sorry. Yeah?
It's just
okay
loading. Now? Yes, we can see the right one now.
Sorry. It's been a long day, so
totally understandable.
Yeah, it's been a long day, meetings and other stuff. But anyway, this is the outline, and essentially contributions are welcome to describe other policies, and especially I was asking if there are different ways that you can classify this policy. I just added the time, and especially there are certain policies that say you cannot collaborate the past 4 years or 3 years. So having this kind of like comparison between policies will be great, not just in scientific publication. As I mentioned, you can have this in when you are peer reviewing open source software or grants or events. I mentioned here from Chaos initiative about this. So I guess I found that maybe it will be relevant for the community to understand this conflict of interest, and I guess we have one community member, Florencia, that she said that she was teaching this to students, so she's very keen to provide some feedback. And yeah, that's in general my kind of contributions in this session. Yeah, in this book dash.
Amazing. Alejandro, that's such a comprehensive chapter already. Thank you so much for adding it. I think it's a thorny topic that people don't necessarily always talk about. So it's a really useful chapter. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Alejandro? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up or any questions in the chat. So passing over now to Neha.
I did have one. Well, we had a quick thinking more about your chapter, Alejandro. led to a short discussion here about what is happening currently with the Journal of Open Source at the moment. But I did have a question for you, which is that how are you planning on, or what do you have ideas of how you wanted to expand your chapter? Because I feel like there are so many different ways that you could take peer review. And in many ways, as Kirsty had said, I think in the first share out session, we talked about how peer review in an expansive sense is also how we talk about the Turing Way as a form of peer review and creating guides. So, and conflict of interest maybe in an open source project, or the peer review of an open source project might look a little different too. So I think my question was maybe what direction, other directions or topics related to peer review were you planning on having besides, conflict of interest?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And I guess there are many things that we can add there because that is a chapter for peer review. So in general, I guess the objective was to distinguish the traditional peer review and open peer review and comparing them. And I guess that this is well established about when you're doing in academic or more like open source. And I think the direction is potentially with this conflict of interest to attack kind of another dimension that people are considering in this peer review process, and there are other dimensions that should be there that potentially not are directly, like everyone knows that they exist, but there are different policies for this direction that potentially we could add. I guess at the moment this is one of the dimensions that I'm covering and I found very nice to add the peer review. Yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, but I guess there are many things to add in terms of the peer review and the crisis. And yeah, we already have the preprint somewhere, the content, but I guess we should highlight like different alternatives to the peer review and how to solve the crisis. Yeah. Christy?
Yeah, I was going to give, I love giving pre-review a shout out. They're an organization that are training everyone, but sort of particularly focusing on early career researchers to review preprints. And what's really nice about reviewing preprints is if you do a journal club around preprints, you actually learn a bit more about the peer review process, because if you only do journal clubs on published papers, you only see the things that have already passed through often multiple iterations of peer review. So I'm always really, really supportive of the work that peer review are doing, and I know some of the founders well, and back in May or June there was an event, and Daniela, who's one of the founders, was on a panel, and in true sort of Kirsty fashion, I stood up and asked a question where I said, what's the point of training people around journal articles? Like, maybe the concept of a journal article needs to fold and we need to think of something better. So why are you training early career researchers to focus on journal articles? And the really good news is, I sort of didn't totally intend to, but Daniela fortunately had already got a really stellar answer to that, which was that she was saying that actually the concept of peer review needs to be wildly expanded beyond two people looking at what is essentially a PDF by the time it kind of gets to them, and having some sort of thoughts about the logic and the way that it's written, and expanding that to more peer review of code, peer review of documentation, and more collaborative kind of co-creation efforts. So what she was saying is that training in how to give a constructive piece of feedback is hugely valuable. And I think your chapter is sort of supplementing that by also highlighting kind of, in a sense, like not just how to do it well, but how to be careful about things that could go wrong a lot, like in that ecosystem. So just wanted to give pre-review a little shout out, and also say it sounds like it's just such a great chapter to add. So thank you so much, Alejandro. It's great.
Great, thank you very much, Alejandro. Next up is Neha.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Neha. I work as a data steward at Utrecht University in the Netherlands. I am an Indian woman in my early 30s. Wow, I had to really think about that. Indian woman in my early 30s. I have shoulder length black hair. I'm wearing a maroon sweater, but with the lighting that I have right now, it just looks black. And my background is my apartment, which I have blurred because I do not want you all to see the mess that is my laundry. Yeah, I worked on this. Yeah, this is my second book dash. The first one I joined was way back in 2020. It was one of the first online ones, I think, totally online because of the pandemic. This week I worked on the illustration gallery for all of the Scriberia images that we have as part of the Turingway. What I'm going to do is share my screen so I can tell you a little more about the app and also the issue that's been sort of built up. Okay, select window or screen, yes. Entire screen, allow. Alrighty. Also going to put the links in the chat if anyone needs them. Does everyone see the app right now, the web app?
Yes.
Yay. Okay, so I'll just describe it a little bit. This is really a prototype app. It's built in R Shiny. I really started this off as a side project to just build my programming skills. And when I showed it to Esther Plomp a while ago, I think a couple of years ago, I was like, hey, do you think this would be useful for the community? And she's like, yes, there's been a GitHub issue about this. People were talking about it. You know, go ahead, make an application to the Book Dash and see what you can get out of it. So the app right now is, yeah, it's just a white background, the screen. There's a title in the top left corner just saying the Turingway illustrations. Right below the title is a gray box with a simple drop-down menu with just the names of the various images we have available. And if I click on any of the figure names, the image pops up on the right-hand side of the screen. They're not all auto-resized, so sometimes they really just take over the whole screen. But yeah, so I have to scroll down for this one because it's quite large. But at this size, they also look quite beautiful. They're really pretty. So that's it at the moment. Very simple. There's no extra buttons or other bells and whistles. But what I have been doing this week is really gathering input on what could be the steps to develop this further for the community. So what is needed will be the needs and requirements so that I can also sort of plan the development journey for myself. So now I'm going to take you to GitHub and the issue that I've been working on. So there's no PR. Pull request. It's issue number 2046, and it's called Create a Browsable Gallery of All Images by Scriberia. And it's a conversation that started by Malvika in 2021. So people have been talking about this for a while. There's a lot happening, but I'm going to scroll all the way down to this little roadmap that I wrote 43 minutes ago, just before the call. And I'll just read it out for those who just want to read it, and you can also listen to me. But basically what I have at the moment is, well, the focus is version 1.1 and 1.2. I would like to have version 1.1. It's tagged with a little rocket ship. So I want to add some welcome text. Keyword search, I already made it work. It's a very simple keyword search, made it work. Obviously, we want information about the Scriberia attribution. We would like a download link maybe, and information about the license, kind of like a footer and license citation for the app itself. So this is 1.1 because I think I can figure it out. It's pretty straightforward. It's just I will have to play around a bit. Version 1.2, it's like an emoji with stars for eyes because that's going to be really awesome. It's all dedicated to alt text. I categorize it a bit differently because it puts a different effort into it, which is maybe with the community start a centralized document with all the figure names and alt text so that I can incorporate it into the app. And then I also have to implement the alt text. So I did get some feedback, for example, from Liz that Shiny is not super accessible. So I have been doing some research to see, okay, what could be the various ways to try it out. I know that Shiny has a function now for alt text, so I have to see if it works or not. And if it doesn't work, there are some different ways that I want to see if I can display the alt text. So that's going to be a little journey in and of itself. Then I have 2.1 and 2.2, which are more like bonus things. So 2.1 has a light bulb, so it's kind of fun stuff. Include the images also without text, because we have two versions of all the images, with and without text. So nice to add that there. Pagination of the images, so if you just want to click through for fun. And a button to generate a random image. So that was something I got from colleagues at the Delft Hub. It's like, it'd just be really cool just to click a button and just get something random. Like, why not? And then we have 2.2, which has the sign of which we typically use for reproducibility, which is kind of like a looping arrow, two arrows. That's really just more infrastructural and things about maintenance. So it would be nice to fully automate deployment with GitHub Actions. Maybe we want a chapter in the Turing way, sort of at the lower end of the book, to say like to the link to the app. So we can have a chapter which says, hey, we have all of these images, and if you want to browse them further, you can go to this app. And the last one, again, for sustainability purposes, maybe you want to transfer the repo to the GitHub organization of the Turing way. And then the last one is version with a question mark. I don't know if it will happen, but these are ideas. And I have a screaming emoji there because it's like, whoa, how are we going to do this? And it's more nice to have. And it'll be sort of really the next part of the app if we ever get there, which is something like category or tag-based search plus display of results, which means really I would have to tag, or as a community, we would have to tag all of the images with broader categories. And then you have to search with that and also display the results, which means right now I have one image displayed as a result, but I would need multiple images. How would I do that? I don't know, but we'll see. Maybe want to incorporate tests. Maybe I want to containerize the app because I just really want to learn Docker, so I need an excuse to learn it. Containerize it. Switch to Python, again, for sustainability, for maintenance with community, I don't know. All of these have question marks, so it's really like, And the last one, and I can finally stop talking, is to provide additional metadata of images. For example, which chapter was it initially featured in or not? What was the publication date? Which book dash or not? Which artist was involved? Because we have a lot of different artists. Maybe we have their name. And who were the contributors from the book dash or from the Turing way who were involved in building up this image, and any other metadata. So that will really just be a little database of metadata, and someone could maybe download it if they're interested. But yeah, so this is the little roadmap I built for myself. It's not going to happen in 1 week, but I have now some direction, which is really great. That's really what I wanted to get out of this book dash. Because I'm like, what do we want? When do I do it? How do I do it? And so on. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen. No, I don't want a new share. I just want to stop sharing. How do I stop? I don't use Zoom, guys, at work. We use Teams. How?
Mia, that is so amazing. We've got Liz saying awesome things about accessibility. Everyone's so impressed with the roadmap. Yeah, I think everyone is very excited about finally addressing this long felt want in the community. And I know you've got lots of questions from Brigitte. Yeah, you are. So Niha, you're back. The screen sharing has stopped. You are all good. You don't need to touch anything else. Yeah, and I know you've got some questions from Brigitte. So yeah, do you want to unmute?
Just before, well, I guess we can do it after the questions, but it was so funny because Brigitte came up to the front of the room, pulled up a chair and was like, I'm ready. I have some questions.
Wait. Just really quickly before Malvika has to drop, I think we want to do a screenshot very quickly, and then we will get into that. So if you want to turn off your camera for screenshot, then that's also fine. But yeah, just really super quickly. And do you want to lead us through?
All right, I'm going to count us down from 3. You always want to have sound effects while you're taking screenshots, but unfortunately, just a click. All right, so if no one wants to give us a little wave, 3, 2, oh, and if you want to turn in your very welcome. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Great, thanks, folks. Oh wait, we missed Meg. Oh my gosh,
No,
I'm so sorry.
It's fine.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Give a little smile. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Great. Awesome. All right. So I pass over to the person that's sitting right next to me to ask many questions.
Questions and comments. I'm one of those annoying ones. I'm wondering if you are also planning to. I dropped the ball here. There is a long-standing issue about the image gallery, and the thing I'm still missing, and it might have been addressed already, is an overview of all the figures and images and everything we have. Do you plan to do that as well? Because it's looping through like one by one is not covering the use case I have is to go into these illustrations and see if I can pick and choose a couple of them that are relevant. And right now, what I'm doing is to go to Zenodo and being annoyed. So it would be really nice to have like a nice gallery, but we might already have a nice gallery. I don't know. And the comment is that I'm happy to help with version 2.2.0 and 2.2.2. So getting the GitHub action up and then moving the repo if needed. So sometimes I'm really slow responding on Slack, sometimes not. So yeah, we should connect, I guess, at some point.
Okay, to respond. So yeah, that is the first point is really relevant. So right now what I'm doing is the script just goes via the Zenodo API and just fetches all of the images. And so that includes both images that are featured in the book and those which may not be used at the moment. So that way we do actually get a list of the images. But I do know that there are other issues. That's also something that I was tracking in the GitHub. So there's different people working on different things. For example, somebody built an overview of all the images to work with the alt text. So, and that was like an overview of the images currently featured in the book. So this is maybe a way to kind of get together to work on this. So I could maybe also have just a CSV file or a spreadsheet, which is available on the homepage of the app that people can download or browse or something. But this is, yeah, I don't know if that's what you had in mind or is something we would have to work on. Yeah.
What I had in mind is really just an overview with thumbnails, like a Sphinx gallery or a gallery.
Yeah.
I can download it from Zenodo and then open in preview whatever locally, but that's not great. And then always have to think about which one is the latest version. Are there any more? Are there all the images in the zip file, or I need to go back to other zip files? So this would be, if maybe you just had another option that just shows all of them, and that would be super useful, at least
that's
for
something
the use case I have.
Yeah. Are we adding this in the notes somewhere? Because I can come back to this. Yeah, I did find someone had implemented sort of a gallery of images using Shiny, but it's somewhat outdated code, but I have bookmarked it, so I'm going to look into it. because that might also be relevant at a later stage when trying to do like category search with multiple results. But yeah, if I can have like a different tab or a different space to kind of display it as a thumbnail as versus yeah, drop my menu. I'll put it in the under the screaming emoji.
Okay, thank you.
So I
That's
can search for it.
appropriate. I have so many screaming emoji to do these titles.
I have to really look into it. So yeah, but that's really nice. Thanks for the input. Always happy for all sorts of possibilities, so I can really dive into it. Other questions, ideas, input, please go to the issue and feel free to drop it there or let me know here.
I love the roadmap with the emojis. I'm wondering, or I'm thinking that you have a keyword search early on, but as things are developed later and the alt texts are included in the database, being able to search the alt texts might be a really helpful way for people to find images of the concepts that they want to show if they're reaching into Turingway to get an image for a talk to some other organization or something.
Yeah. That's also something, I have no idea how I would do that, but I'm gonna put it in there. That's also, yeah. Could also be that if you don't have it implemented just yet, you can link them to the original database or the spreadsheet. So that's also like a midway option. All right. Thanks. Gonna put that
It just seems like a way to use alt text to help even more people, you know?
Yeah, for sure. No, it's just you want to really, the whole point of this gallery is you have so many images and then twice a year you get even more images. How best can you search it and find the ones? And there's a couple of really, how to say, iconic ones that everyone sort of uses again and again, but there's a lot of really cool ones, and I think, yeah, we don't always grasp or manage to see. So the more searchable and findable it is, the better.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'm adding it to the notes and I'll put it in the issue.
Thank you.
As well.
Are there any more questions?
No hands up and nothing in the chat.
Our next update is going to be from Kirsty, who's been writing furiously all week, I think.
Thank you for the introduction. I have not been writing furiously all week. I did do some good thinking, and I did do some writing on Thursday. I would say Tuesday and Wednesday, in part because I helped chair some sessions, give me a little bit of an out, and in part because the United States decided to really wear its racism and sexism very broadly on its sleeve. I had a couple of stress naps on those days. So I would say I did not succeed in my goal, but I did make good progress. And I had two goals. So the explicit goal was that we've been talking for a long time now about shifting the governance model for the Turing Way. What we've been grappling with as a community is sort of disentangling the many hats that Malvika and I wear as leaders of the Turing Way, principal investigators according to the Turing Institute's documents that fund them, and also sort of paid staff members and then line managers in various different dimensions of people who are also paid to work on the Turing Way. So it's quite a sort of complex disentanglement. And as everyone knows, well, as most of you know, I am currently still paid by the Turing Institute, but I have finished my last day of work at the Turing Institute, which obviously is very clear from the fact that I was in the office today and I've spent all week working on the Turing Way project. But what this means is that from January, I think it's really, really important that we move to a more explicit governance model. One of the things that I was grappling with was our guiding principles. There was a draft of guiding principles that Anne had drafted for working groups, and I was grappling with that to sort of expand it to guiding principles for decision making across the whole project. I ended up deciding on 3 proposed principles. To be very clear, not only is this pull request not complete, it is also, when it is complete, it will be for like a lot of comment and input. I ended up choosing guiding principles of empowerment of contributors to participate in the decision-making process, transparency of ways of working and how decisions are made, and inclusion of diverse perspectives in all areas of the project, all areas in the project. And then I also had a secret second goal, which is that I, for truly many years now, have not actually made any actual contributions to the book, like by typing something in a markdown file and submitting it to the GitHub repository. And I hope very much that I will have a job in the future. We could finish that. I hope very much that I'll have a job in the future. More specifically, I hope that I will have a job in the future where I am mentoring others to contribute to the Turing Way. And I find myself feeling surprisingly nervous about being able to do that, given that I've always been surrounded by people who have literally done it faster and sort of for me. So I will quickly share my screen, and I will share, hopefully, this browser. Here we go. Let me go ahead and close a bunch of these tabs. So let me go, oh, hang on. Let me go back. Nope. I'm going to go find my little pull request. Can I just double check with you that you're seeing the GitHub repository and you're seeing me navigate to the pull requests?
Yes.
One, great stuff. So this is my pull request. I changed a few files, and you can see that there's a lot of work that Anne has done as part of a previous branch, and then I've started to add in a few more things. You can see that I've said fix merge conflict, sync up with main, add some updates. Then I have to get into my terrible mess of figuring out the YAML, moving sort of files around. And I do have a deploy preview. Then you can see I'm fixing my linting, linting my YAML, and I'm adding a figure. So I do not have a fixed build, but that's because there are old files in there that it's raising as an error that I need to kind of, once I've moved that content into new files and distributed them in the right place, they will go. So actually the build is not as bad as it looks. I had a really interesting error with inclusive language, and I still have a warning with inclusive language, which is that we are citing in one of the files the Kubernetes governance. It's a good file, it's a good document, it's very useful, but they still call their main branch master. And so our test is coming up and saying you should consider using inclusive language, but there isn't another option to link to their governance that doesn't involve master in the URL. So I'm curious to know if there's a way to sort of fix that. But I did successfully, let me scroll up, and I can click on deploy preview. What I did manage to do is add to the community handbook a section on governance and decision making. I'd like to reiterate is it is extremely not complete, but I added some chapters, I added some sub chapters. I messed up. I added some references, I did some links, but I messed up on the formatting, so I'm still fixing that. I added this figure, which is talking about making sure that we have as many decisions made at the community level as possible. We have a distinction between maintainer groups, which are in green, and delivery groups, which are in orange. And I did manage to get a little bit of text into the drafts talking about the difference between a working group and a delivery group. The key is that a delivery group has external accountability. So the 3 delivery groups at the moment are the community management delivery group. We have the this one, I think I chose, the symbol I chose for the Jupyter Hub research project, looking at improving their contributor pathways. And then we also have the Turing Way Practitioners Hub, which is a funded project through Innovate UK. So these ones are, we're teasing apart the concept of leadership, making these more modular, thinking about leadership for particular external accountabilities. And then the constitutional level is made up of the chairs of the working group. And I did manage to get a bit of text put into this one. I got into a bit of a sort of rabbit hole of how do you elect a chair. And then I put in some ways of working for that steering council. And I put in a little bit about decision making, and then a few example decisions. And I put in a hypothetical worked example of collaborating on a funding application. So how would the steering council engage with someone who, it's a hypothetical one, who wanted to come along and work with the Turing Way, putting in a funding proposal. So I will stop there. I will say, I feel I did sort of 50% well in actually being able to figure out Git again. I would say I did about sort of 35% well in actually getting my writing done and getting a pull request open to be able to at least get started. And I think I did 85% well with actually participating in a book dash, which I don't think I've done possibly since pre-pandemic. So it was an absolute joy. It was so much fun. I was so inspired by so many people. And I'm sorry to everyone that works with me that I was supposed to finish off my pull request, but I will finish my pull request. We will scope it out. We will make sure that the Turing Way is a sustainable, diversely supported, and as inclusive and transparent as we possibly can open source project. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, Kirsty. Does anyone have any comments or questions for Kirsty? Penelope.
Thanks, Ariel. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm from the Turing. I worked in research engineering. Kirsty, just about the master branch, what you can do instead of linking to a branch is to link to a specific commit. And I think that's even better because that means that if they delete that file on the master branch, the link will still work.
I love it. I love it. That's so clever. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. I will do that.
But it's good to hear you talk about this issue, because I think it's something that many open source projects face, and even with the projects that we have at the Turing, we don't know what's going to happen after we're done working on them either. So thank you for that.
Great. We've got some congratulations in the chat. Everyone very impressed with your work. Thank you very much, Kirsty. Final call for questions or comments for Kirsty. I feel we will be discussing this at future community forums anyway, so you are all more than welcome to come back and dig in once you've had a chance to look at the pull request once it's completed. I think possibly our final speaker today is Emma, sharing out her work. Emma, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Anna's forced me to go again, so it's Anne's fault. But I have an exciting update, because this morning I reported that sorry, I'm Emma. I am a white Muslim woman wearing a dark headscarf and dark rimmed glasses, and I have a lovely image behind me of the community Scriberia image with lots of people helping other people. And that's very relevant because what I've been doing this week is trying to revise the community management chapter to become a research community manager chapter, and also to write a personal story. And Lena, who was here earlier, who's been doing lots of different things, but on Monday we worked together to chat about our own personal stories and to help each other with those. And this morning I said that I hadn't finished it, but ta-da, this afternoon I have finished it and I've put it into the PR, and Cass has been reviewing it, I think. And the other update is I've actually fixed the PR as well, which I'm more proud of because it had lots of problems with the talk, multiple problems for some reason. And I've just been, as we've been doing this, I've been trying to debug it, and I think now it's actually going to pass all the checks. So that feels like the biggest achievement of the week, actually figuring out all the bugs in that PR, because there were multiple ones. So that's my update. But the other thing that I will shout out about is that I didn't do a huge amount of contributions apart from the social sessions this week. So I led 2, and I can't say social sessions, it's like a tongue twister. So I ran the session on Monday, which is becoming sort of a book dash thing we do on Mondays, which is the Image-a-thon, where we try and put images into the book. This time we were actually focusing on updating our alt text and actually improving the alt text for our images. I can report that we added 3 images, but more importantly, we improved 19 alt texts for images, which I think is the most thing to be proud of. I actually think it's more than that because I didn't actually set up the issue very well and give instructions for people reporting back what they'd done. So I think when we actually do the planning committee report, I'll actually dig into the PRs a little bit more and check actually if the number's correct. But I'm super proud of those numbers. And then on Thursday, I ran the social session, which was on the UNESCO draft principles of open science monitoring. And we did have some really productive discussions. The thing to say about that is that the consultation that we're writing, it's still open until the end of the month. In the document, we've got a Google Doc which you can contribute into, and a link to the draft principles as well. But on the 20th of November in the Collaboration Cafe, please come along because we will chat about this more and we'll gather more people's comments so that we can do a Turing Way community submission to that particular consultation. So thanks very much, everybody. And I loved seeing everybody's contributions. It was brilliant.
Thank you so much, Emma. Kirsty has her hand up.
I just wanted to say, I really think the activity for, I think the UNESCO social session is brilliant and it's super productive. Like it's really great to be able to kind of give that feedback. So my somewhat sort of serious side, which is quite a lot of me, really loves that. And then the fact that we opened with the activities of adding images to the repository and improving the alt text. It was so much fun. It was so helpful. We hit like weird Git contributing bugs that everyone was there to like hold each other's hands through and support each other through. It's just a fantastic sort of first day. And I think the thing that I wanted to just also link to is, Neha, your work where we're going to be able to make it so that an individual person doesn't have to rewrite the alt text because you'll be able to find the image and just take the alt text that has already been written. It's just, it's another resource that the Turing Way can provide to people who are using these images that means it's just so much more powerful working as part of a community than having to reinvent the same wheel over and over again. So I just wanted to say thank you so much.
Yeah, the image adding athons that we do are some of my favorite sessions as well, because everyone comes away having merged a PR and having like got something in the book, and then we also get reminded about all the cool images that we've already got and make sure that they're actually put into the book as well. And yeah, it's a really nice connecting up. It's one of my favorite sessions as well. So thank you, Emma, for leading that and for doing all the prep work for it as well. And going through and finding alt text that needs improvement and all that kind of stuff.
No problem. I actually enjoyed doing that. And for people who weren't at that session, actually, I started at the beginning of the book and actually worked through the chapters, which is what we recommend not to do in the Turing way, because there's so many chapters. But what it actually made me realize was that, because the guide for reproducibility obviously is the original and the instruction and the original bits, all those images, when we've put them in, actually the alt text there is what needs improving. All of the later chapters, the other guides basically, actually are really well done anyway. So it was a good reflective exercise. I think that we have improved as a community in our accessibility.
Any other questions or comments for Emma? I'm not seeing anything in the chat and nothing in the shared notes document either. So I'm just going to do a final notice before Liz closes this out and say thank you to everyone. And that is to please share your feedback on the book dash and this session in the shared notes document that I've just posted in the chat. Pluses, deltas, what rocked, what would you like to see different next time? What else could we do in terms of social sessions and things like that? All feedback is good feedback, and we really do lean heavily on it to make book dashes better going forward as the planning committee and the working group. So please do share that out. And then I think, yeah, Liz, if you want to close this out. Oh, you're on mute, Liz.
To
Wait,
add to
Anne?
what you said a little, I especially would like to hear about experiences people had with accessibility or lack of accessibility and ways that we can improve how we work together in the future. And I'd like to also just really reiterate that we really do want to know. I have consulted with people and said that the word feedback has become toxic because it usually gets ignored. But I do really hope that we can keep improving things as far as accessibility. It's been a really great week. It has been really good to have company and work together and hang out with people from all over the world and get different perspectives on some of the things that I'm working on and learn about what other people are working on. I really want to thank everybody for their time and their care. This is, we've got a really intentional, respectful, collaborative community, and it's different from some of the other roles that we have in our lives, and it's really great. And I just want to really thank everybody for being part.
Great. We have a final hand up.
I'm gonna just jump in to add the thank yous to Ariel and Liz for chairing this session, for Kirsty for also opening with the chair earlier today, for Lele for co-hosting the London Hub, to Esther for hosting the Delft Hub, hosting sessions, Emma as well. Thank you all so much for making it possible to run this event. So I'm flipping the appreciations right back at you, because you deserve it.
And you should say thanks to the planning committee as well. Well, I've said it. Thank you to the planning committee.
Yes.
And thank you
and
to
thanks to
Anne.
Anne. Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay. I think that is time. thank you very much, everyone, for coming once again. We'll put this recording on YouTube for posterity and a reminder of all the awesome work we've done. And it's on me to officially close the November 2024 Book Dash number 12. We'll be back next year. Keep your eyes peeled. Take care, everyone.
I